Consistency is the key to marketing with Tyson Mutrux, episode 007. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Profit with Law. Today we have a special guest, and you're going to really appreciate this episode. First of all, I apologize for my voice in this intro. I'm battling either allergies or a cold, so please forgive me. But the upcoming interview, the audio is great. I don't have a cold there. And I had the pleasure of having a conversation with Tyson Mutrux. Now, Tyson Mutrux is the managing partner of Mutrux Firm, LLC in St. Louis and Columbia, Missouri. He is a personal injury lawyer, and he is also the host of the Maximum Lawyer podcast. Tyson got his law degree in St. Louis University and is passionate about motorcycles, bourbon, and his family. What excites me about this upcoming interview is, first of all, we talk about some marketing things that every attorney who is trying to build a law firm should listen really closely to. There's some really, really key nuggets that Tyson shares with us, and you really will get a lot of value from it. But then we go off script and we talk about his how he got involved with the podcast, his Maximum Lawyer podcast. He also talks about his upcoming event that he's hosting together with his podcast co-host, and it sounds like an exciting thing. So I urge you to take a listen and let me know what you think. And if you enjoy it, go ahead and share this episode with your friends. Share it out on social media, spread the wealth, and let other people get a chance to hear it as well. So without further ado, here is the replay of that interview that I've had with Tyson. My name is Moshe Amsel. I'm your host of Profit with Law, and I'm here today with Tyson Mutrux of Mutrux Law. Tyson, how are you?
I am good, Moshe. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful today. I appreciate you joining me here on the show. You're not only a law firm owner of Mutrux Law, but you also run another podcast, and that's the Maximum Lawyer podcast with Jim Hacking. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I do want to ask you some questions about running your law firm and things that our audience would want to hear on your journey to success. But I also am going to want to ask you some questions about your podcast and being a podcast host. So we'll kind of cover both of those in this interview, and I hope that that's okay.
Absolutely, fire away. I'm ready to answer anything.
All right. So I've actually been a listener of your show as well, and I know that your show started in 2016, and back then you were an attorney for 6 years. So if my math is correct, you've been in the game for somewhere between 8 and 9 years at this point.
9 years, right at the 9-year mark. So yeah, right around there.
Awesome. So how far into your legal career was it before you started your own firm?
Just under a year, I'd say. Just under a year. I'd worked for a large volume firm in St. Louis, and then after that, I moved on to start my own firm. So it's been a while. There was a merger with another firm in there that has since split up. But of those 9 years, roughly around 8 years, I've had my own firm.
That's great. So when you started your firm, it was just you, or did you actually start with staff to begin with when you started?
No, it was just me. That lasted about 6 months. So it was just me. It was me answering the phones, me requesting the medical records, me sending letters out and emails out to clients, me requesting police reports, doing my bookkeeping. It was just me, pretty much, which is, I think, a pretty standard story when it comes to solo and small firms. They usually start with just one person, but yeah, just me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with you that most attorneys start that way. The question is when do you decide to bring on that first employee? And some people struggle with that their entire career and never hire that first person. You lasted 6 months and then brought somebody on. So how did you know when it was time to make that first hire, bring that first person into the firm?
Well, step one is making sure you have enough money. But it's what's interesting is that I mean, you don't, most people don't think of actually hiring people as an investment that will make you more money. We just look at it as an expense. And so it took me, I probably should have hired someone right away. I really should have, because I just wasn't getting anything done. Because whenever you're answering the phones and doing everything else, not a lot of work actually gets done if you think about it. Like, what I mean by that is moving cases forward. Nothing's really getting done because you're answering the phones and doing everything else, administering the firm. You're not really doing anything else. But once I finally had gotten over that, okay, and it was actually after a meeting I had, Jim Manning, he's actually he owns a real estate company in St. Louis. And he was like, you got to remember, like when you're paying these salaries, you're not paying them all up front. You're paying them each month. They're bite-sized pieces that you're paying. And so I finally, warmed up to that idea and said, yeah, it started hiring someone. It's not too bad. And, you break it down. You're not paying these big chunks of money. You're not paying a $30,000 salary or $40,000 salary, 50, whatever it may be. You're breaking it up, and so I finally got over that, and that changed a lot for me. I was able to get a lot more done, and I've since learned a lot about hiring, firing, and things like that. But you have to sort of get over that fear that you're not going to have any more money. I mean, the worst case scenario is you're going to fire the person. But you know what? That's just because either you're not doing the right things, or they're not doing the right things. In an ideal world, you hire someone that's going to bring in more money for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I've learned in the process of growing a business, being a business owner, is that you need to understand that this is the chicken and the egg question. Like, which comes first? Do you first get the business that you can't handle and now you're forced to bring somebody on to handle it, or do you bring somebody on and that creates the capacity for you to bring on more clients? And it's definitely the latter. It's definitely, if you create the situation where there's a need for those clients will fill the gap. It's almost like osmosis, where it's going to go to the highest pressure area, and those clients are going to somehow get sucked into that vacuum that you create by creating that bandwidth. So now you said something interesting, that you really should have hired somebody right away. And you had started off saying that what you did was pretty much standard. So if somebody is first starting a practice, and really this podcast is not intended to be something for somebody who's just starting out, but it's a great question to ask, because there's going to be people who are listening to this that don't have their own firm and are thinking about starting one. If you don't have clients coming in, we both agree that you should have that help. How should somebody who's starting a firm approach this? Is this something that they should have come in with an investment or savings prepared to do that? Or do they get their first client and then take that money the first client's bringing in and hire that, make that hire? What would you advise somebody who's just starting?
So I'm gonna back up a second, because this is a really good question, especially for lawyers. I get this question all the time. Should you start your own firm right out of law school? My answer is always no. Okay, so my starting point is you shouldn't start this with basically no clients. What you should do is you should work, and this is just my own opinion. People disagree with me, but the reason why I think that this is true is you don't know jack squat coming out of law school. Yeah, I mean, you've read a bunch of books and stuff. You don't know how to practice law. You know how to read really well. That's pretty much what you know how to do. And so my opinion is you should work for someone. And I was in a very fortunate position where I worked for a firm that trained me really freaking well. I mean, even prior to graduating from law school, I'd worked for them for 3 years, and they trained me really, really well. And I was doing everything that the lawyers were doing by the time I graduated. So I really knew what I was doing, because the training was incredible. So if you do this in the way I think you should do it, you should work for someone. And by a year or two, you should have a pretty good client base, and you should be able to take those clients with you, because you've stayed in touch with them. You've taken really good care of them. They're happy with your services. And in Missouri, you can take your clients with you. They get the choice of who they hire. So, and you may have to pay the other firm some money, whatever, that's fine. But whenever you start, you should have a good, steady flow of clients. And honestly, if you don't, you probably shouldn't start your firm because you probably haven't learned the techniques and the marketing techniques in getting those clients, getting people attracted to you. So I guess hopefully I didn't lose the question there, but if you can, when you leave your other firm, if you take my advice, you work for someone else, you've got those clients with you. I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking staff that works for that firm, but start hiring it right away and get people in your firm right away so they can keep that customer service that you're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely, if you're able to bring clients with you, then you kind of sort of have some cash flow coming in that can support hiring somebody. So that makes sense. I know that there are some areas of law where it's a one and done kind of situation. So bringing clients with you might not really be helpful, but I guess you could tap into that same client base for referrals and, and build up clients pretty quickly that way as well.
And I just realized I got off base a little bit because went off my tangent about law school. I'll back up and answer your question. So whenever you're working for someone else, or if hopefully you've got some sort of bankroll to finance your firm, because with personal injury especially, because I do just personal injury, nothing else. If you're doing criminal defense, family law, other things where you're getting cash up front, you can technically start with very little money. But the thing with injury lawyers is we spend a lot of money for 6 to 9 months whenever you have a brand new firm. And so our bottom line goes straight. It's just, we have no money coming in. It's just going straight down. And so we don't start to see those returns for 6 to 9 months. And then we get into the black. We're in red for 6 to 9 months. And trust me, I've been through this a couple times now. I started my own firm. I partnered with another firm, and we basically treated our firms as separate firms. And as we started to meld together, and for 9 months, we weren't making any money. We're way in the red. And it's just how it works. I mean, it's just how it works with personal injury stuff. So especially with personal injury lawyers, you need a bankroll. You need some sort of bankroll, and if that's a line of credit, that's just a bunch of money in the account, whatever it may be. You need some sort of access to cash to pay employees, because otherwise you're going to go under really quick. There are resources with injury lawyers like Advocate Capital, which will allow you to front case expenses. You can do things like that. It's going to cost your clients a premium, but there's resources out there for you.
Oh, so many things you've mentioned that we could take this conversation in so many different directions. But I like that you're focusing on some cash flow issues, because so many people who go into the business of law and starting their practice are completely unaware, I think is the right terminology, of what it takes to run a business, and they don't understand how to forecast what that cash flow need is going to be, and that's so important. So kind of like having a business plan in place where you can map out what your expenses are going to be and how long realistically is it going to take for that money to start coming in, so that you can see what kind of war chest you need, is really important. The other thing is that once you get that war chest, there's such a temptation to spend it on the wrong things.
Yeah.
And you really need to, if you had that written plan to begin with, now you've got the guide that you're going to follow and say, okay, no, this money is for this purpose and I'm not going to use it on anything else. Whereas if you go into it blindly saying, okay, I need $100,000 to start my firm, well, by the time you finish renting an office space and leasing an office space and putting furniture in it and buying office equipment and maybe hiring staff or whatever, paying for a bunch of software, there's a ton of things you could spend money on. And before you turn around, that $100,000 is gone, and now you don't have that runway that you need. I'd like to switch gears here for a second and get away from this how to start a firm, because that's not where I want to focus our conversation.
Sure.
What I would like to do is go back to something that you said earlier, which is you shouldn't start a firm if you don't know how to get clients. And that leads us right into the marketing conversation, which I think should be the front and center point of running a law firm. Is you got to know how to bring in those clients. If you can't bring in the clients consistently, then you've got constant cash flow issues, and it's very hard to hire staff because you don't know that you're going to be able to pay them. So you're very reluctant to do that. You also want to make sure that you're able to survive, and you're always worrying about, okay, am I going to pay my employees or am I going to pay myself? So being able to bring in clients consistently is really key to being able to run a successful practice without needing to worry every day, where's my cash coming from? So you've been doing this for a while. You have a firm now that's, I believe, 12 people in your firm right now.
Right.
So anybody who's trying to get to, from solo to the $1 million mark of revenue would be able to take advice from you because you've been there. So what are the marketing strategies that somebody should follow from when they're solo to now they're starting to bring on staff and they maybe need to go scale beyond what worked originally?
So it's funny. So one of the first questions I ask whenever I speak to law students, I say, "What's the most important thing about running a law firm?" And they're like, "Oh, being a really good lawyer and doing this or knowing discovery, blah blah blah, knowing the rules. Yeah, those are all important. But the number one thing is getting clients, because if you don't have clients, you can't do any work on them. You actually can't work on the files. You can't help them out. So you need to learn to get those in." This question, we could talk about a billion different ways of getting clients. I think the key is just consistency in whatever way you choose. For me, it's referrals. I get a lot of referrals from other lawyers. I planted that seed really early in my career when I worked for that volume injury firm. I was, any cases that we didn't take, I was sending out to other lawyers, and so that they have always remembered that, and they've taken care of me. And so I always make sure I stay in touch with those people. I stay in touch with my referral partners. I take care of my referral partners. That's just one component of the way we do things. We also make sure that our name's out there. We do a bunch of videos, and we stay in touch in social media. So basically our channels are YouTube video, Facebook, and referrals, or referral partners, other attorneys. That's basically our three channels. That's what we work on, and we work on those pretty hard. But you can do it for a variety of different ways. We don't work really, really hard on SEO. We work kind of hard on SEO. We've got a ton of reviews on Google My Business, and so we get a lot of cases through that. So that's another channel. But honestly, it's not like we focus on that as a channel. We do get cases from it, but the key is to be consistent, whatever channel you are, and experiment a lot. I've failed a lot with different marketing channels, and I knew it's just an experiment. I've tried different marketing companies. I've paid for leads, which I think is garbage for the most part. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Just make sure you're consistent with how you're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I would like to latch into, before we move on from the marketing conversation, I would like to latch into the three things that you are having success with, because I think the people who can use those channels might be able to gain something from some of your experience that you've achieved. So first of all, with referrals, which is what you're describing as the bulk of your business is coming that way, what would you give as advice to somebody who says, how do I go about getting referral partners? And my understanding is your referral partners are other attorneys. So how do I go about going to other attorneys that perhaps might view themselves as my competition and partner up with them and have a situation where, first of all, what do I send to them? And then, how do they know what to send to me?
So there's attorneys that I've never sent a single case, and they still send me cases. And so a big part of it is that they trust me, because there's a lot of personal injury lawyers out there that will screw them over and not pay them the co-counsel fee. So in Missouri, we can pay co-counsel fees, and so they'll bring in cases, and sometimes they'll help with certain parts of the case. They'll take care of intake, or they'll take care of the client-facing stuff. There's a variety of agreements that we have. The main thing is trust with those attorneys, because they know I'm not going to screw them out of their co-counsel fee at the end of the case, because we're pretty much in complete control of that money at the end of the case. That's a big part of it. But it's really about, it's such a deep conversation, because it's really about nurturing relationships is what it's really about. There's no real key trick to this, right? You meet with these people, you build relationships with these people. People listening to this maybe like, oh yeah, whatever. It's that simple, okay? It's that old adage, get people to know, like, and trust you. That's what it's about. You meet with them on a regular basis. You take care of them. You make sure that they can trust you, and you treat them like a human being. You do those basic things, and guess what they're going to do? If they know what you do as a business, they're going to refer you people. And so just do those basic things, and it's pretty freaking simple, in my opinion.
Right. Tyson, I love that you say that, because so much about being successful in business is how you treat people and where you come from. So if you're always coming from a place of service and how can I serve you, people love that. And that works for your clients, it works for your employees, and it works for your referral partners. It basically works all the way around. So, I love that you bring that up, and that should be the core focus. Do you use any sort of system to make sure that you're on top of these referral partners and that you don't let one go for too long before you go out to lunch or something like that?
Yeah, so I use Infusionsoft, and it's really kind of funny. And there's a variety of different CRMs out there that you can use. You can use whatever you want. I like Infusionsoft. I think it's really good. There's a lot of automation elements to it. But this is for a non-lawyer that I would go and get my hair cut every few weeks, and I had this little game I would play with myself. He didn't know it was a game, but I would go in, the guy would cut my hair, and I would get one little additional tidbit about him and his family or what he does. And each time I would come in the next time, I would mention what we talked about the previous experience. And so whatever you use, if it's a spreadsheet or something else, take notes on people, because it makes such a difference whenever you're talking to these people. When you remember that their son has been playing the guitar and they're struggling with certain things, or they played a song recently that was a new song for them and they really did a good job, and you mention that the next time you see them, they will remember you forever. So I don't expect you to remember everything, every discussion you've had with every single person. That's why you have a CRM to track it and keep notes on people. It's really freaking simple. Write down people's anniversaries, write down their spouse's name. If I ever go into a meeting with a referral partner, I'll go to my phone and I'll start looking, what notes do I have on them? Hey, how's Samantha doing? How's such and such doing? Ask about their spouse. It makes all the difference. It's incredible. And I know whenever people have done their homework on me, because they're doing the same stuff. I mean, they're asking me the same things. It makes a big difference.
Absolutely. So real quick, for those of you who are listening and are like struggling to, manage paycheck to paycheck, don't go looking for a CRM right now. Take out a spreadsheet and start taking notes that way. You could get fancy with it later, but this is such gold, and I hope that you're taking notes.
Notebook. You can give a notebook. I mean, it's simple. It's really simple.
There you go. So Tyson, for those of you who are listening on the audio version, Tyson pulled out a notebook from his pocket and held it up in the air for us to see on video. But I love that you are systematic about it, because really that's the key to success in business, is getting into the habit of doing things systematically. And whether it's referral partners or client meetings or the way you produce the deliverable of your work that you do in your practice, the key is to do the same thing every single time, and having a system for that. In this case, Tyson's got a CRM he uses, but whatever your system is, if it's a notebook, just have a way that you can easily find it and make sure that you take notes and you can go back and look at that. So I love that you said that. Now, you also mentioned that you do video on YouTube and you do stuff on Facebook. When did you add that into your repertoire of marketing? At what size was your firm that you started to focus on something beyond referrals? And, so how far did referrals carry you in your growth journey?
I mean, they've always been an integral part, but I would say, so I will say this, whenever I first started my firm, I'm going to back up a second. I also started taking on some criminal cases too, because of that issue I was talking about with cash flow. Criminal cases, you can get cash up front. Injury cases, you get paid on the back end. So I got into SEO really early on with criminal cases, because I thought it was like shooting fish in a barrel. This was 10 years ago, or roughly 9 years ago. I recognized it in law school and actually launched a website and started to get ready for that. Started putting on content without giving legal advice. I started putting on content to sort of also age my website a little bit, because I knew it was just TysonMutrux.com. I just wanted to age that website a little bit. So I did some of the basics. But whenever I first launched, I hit SEO pretty hard on the criminal side, not on the injury side, because I knew it was pointless. I mean, people are spending $5,000 a month on injury stuff. So it's hard to break into that market. And I completely understand that. And I acknowledge it then. But back then, getting SEO leads was super easy for criminal cases. The next step after that was pay-per-click. I did pay-per-click, and it was super freaking easy to get those cases. And so I guess to answer your question from the criminal standpoint, very early on. From the injury standpoint, I'd say I started doing videos. It's probably been 5 years ago or so. So we probably ran right around a 4-person firm. So right around that point, and I always talk about the difference between pre-video and post-video. In the courthouse, it was always in pre-video. Hey, what's going on, buddy? How you doing? They couldn't remember my name. Post-video, everyone knew my name because they knew I was doing the videos. I was putting out video every single day, and this was before video became big. There wasn't that video button on your Facebook app. It was all very, very early in the game, and so it was. I hate the phrase game changer, so it wasn't a game changer, but it did definitely elevate my game.
Very cool. So for your video strategy, how frequently are you publishing a video out there on, I think you said you're doing it on YouTube, right? So how often are you publishing a video out there on YouTube?
I'd say a few times a week on YouTube. We're doing a new strategy that we actually launched a couple weeks ago. It's been interesting. And I don't really have a name for it, but I'm kind of pulling back the curtain, and we're kind of showing behind the scenes sort of stuff. And so I'll talk to a client. I'll kind of look over. I've got a little tripod here. I'll kind of show it on camera. It's just sitting here, and I'm just using my phone. Very simple. I've got more high-end cameras, but just using my phone, shooting a quick 2-minute video, and then putting on the website. First day I did it, got three new leads. Took two new cases. It was very, very basic stuff, and it was like it's relatable stuff. And a couple of them were about. One of them was about a client being followed by an insurance company. It was a very simple one. Another one was just dealing with, it was a stupid negotiation I had with an insurance company. How they're being ridiculous. Things like that people were like, oh yeah, I can't stay in insurance companies. They're sort of my boogeyman. And so we'll call it behind the scenes strategy. And it's been working really, really well. So we're always kind of mixing things up. I try not to make my videos too polished because the open rates and the watch rates are not very long on those. And so I try to make them a little bit rough around the edges. So I'd say now we're pushing that about 3 times a week on social media.
Wow. So I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are like, holy crap, how am I going to put out three videos a week? You're just saying that I'm shooting it on my phone. We're not making it professional looking, and we're just posting it up there. So it goes on YouTube, and how do people find it? Like, are you putting ad dollars behind it, or you have people who are searching for it and finding it that way?
No ad dollars. So we're using something called TubeBuddy, and you don't have to use this stuff. This is just extra tools that you can pay for to help you out. We use TubeBuddy to help optimize it the best we can. I left this part out when we do the social media videos. I take the social media videos and I've been doing sort of long form Facebook posts, is what I'll call them. Everyone hears about long form blog posts, long form emails. This is a long form Facebook post, and you write it like you would write an email. I put it on Facebook, and it gets really, really, really good likes and comments. You get a lot of interaction, so a lot of engagement. I take that same content that I post on Facebook and I put that on my YouTube posts. I didn't used to do that. That's something new. We would before we put a nice little blurb about what I talk about, put a nice title on it, add my tags, and pretty much be done. I'm adding that additional element to it, and we're 2 weeks in on this new experiment. I don't know what I mean. The numbers are still too early to tell. Hey, this is going to be great or not. It's working really, really good on Facebook. I don't know if it's going to be a great idea on YouTube. I don't. I'll know in the next few months or so whether or not that's going to be a good way of doing it.
Right. Yeah, but the fact that you put a video out and within days you have multiple what you said clients, but even if you just have multiple inquiries, then it's definitely working. And I mean, there are people who are listening to this that would love to have their phone ring 3 times in a week.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And so definitely something that is worth trying and giving a whirl. But also remember that Tyson started doing this when he had a firm with 4 people in it. There's a time and place for everything. And if you're struggling to just be able to produce the work and put it out there, perhaps a advanced strategy for bringing in clients is not where you should be focusing your effort, and instead you should be focusing on fixing the insides of your firm so that you can handle additional clients when they come in. which brings us to another topic and that I think you're quite familiar with because you guys talk about it on the podcast all the time, and that is automation within the firm. And I know that this is something you're passionate about. So maybe they've got practice management software in place. They're trying to figure out how to maybe automate some of the tasks that are going on behind the scenes and make sure things are not, falling through the cracks. What are your top tips, I guess, for them on how to start tackling that elephant and making it easier for themselves?
Okay, so to start, two comments. One, if you think you have automation because you have DocGen on your case management system, that's not automation. Okay, we're talking about legit automation. So that's a quick comment. So just because Clio has DocGen or all these other ones have DocGen, that isn't it's not automation. Okay, it's DocGen, something else. So point number two, if you've not sat down and actually from A to Z said, okay, here's what the start of my case looks like, here's what the end of my case looks like. If you've not done that, written it out A to Z, you need to start. That's the starting point. You ask what the starting point is, that's the starting point. So from the moment you pick up the phone call, what does your secretary say? What sort of checklist do you have for what's a good case, what's not a good case? When do they pass that case on to you as opposed to them doing the initial intake? After you've done the intake, what's your intake process? What are the forms you need to use? What do you ask during the initial interview? So, from A to Z, what are the things you need to do? What are the forms you need to use from the moment you get the case to the moment you close that case? And then you're not done. How do you follow up with that person? So there's a lot to this. Is that a lot of work? Yeah, it is. It's absolutely a lot of work. But if you want to run a firm that's going to grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger, or maybe you don't, maybe you just want to have a firm and be able to take a vacation for 2 weeks during the year, you need to systemize, you need to write everything out. So whenever you're gone, it's great. I remember whenever automation, I always knew I needed to automate stuff, but whenever it really hit me that it's fantastic. My biggest month I've ever had was a week that I was gone, right? It's like, think about that. I made the most money I've ever made in a week I was gone. I was out of the state. I was at a conference it was actually a fun conference I was at. So
got to go way more often.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what they kept joking with. They kept saying, you need to leave, just never come back. It's just how it works sometimes, and that's the power of automation. Things are happening without you having to, actually do things on it. You don't have to pull the document up and draft it. Things are going out automatically. So to answer your question, though, go back, sit down, after you're done with this podcast and just write out from A to Z, even if it's just a basic 1 or 2 lines per section, segment out your firm from start to finish, and then write a couple things underneath it that need to be done under each one of those segments. It's a really, really helpful thing for you.
Yeah, so I love that you say that because creating a process before implementing a system behind the process is absolutely key. Otherwise, people always put the software first. Like, let me find the solution and then try to plug my practice and what we do right into that solution. And the reality is that they don't all fit. And you end up trying to change your process in order to fit the solution that you put in place, and it's not necessarily in your best interest to do that. So definitely documenting beforehand exactly what it is that you're doing, and doing things manually with some sort of checklist and paper trail is definitely the first step. We all like to shortcut the process, but getting that all defined is the hard work. And once it's defined, getting the right system in place is definitely the easier part of that process. But a lot of the listeners here are using practice management software. Many are using Clio, and you mentioned DocGen with Clio. One of the things that Clio doesn't do well is task management, making sure that when you have a specific set of tasks in your process that need to get completed, and being able to assign those tasks to somebody and knowing that one task shouldn't be done until another one is completed, so that they're relying on each other. Do you have any insight as to what people can use to start to make that process electronic rather than, it's not necessarily automation, it's really more just making sure that everybody is being efficient and knows when it's their turn?
Yeah, so there's some basic things you can use. I kind of hate this topic, but I'm happy to answer it. It's not It's not that I don't like the question. It's a very common question. It all has to do with personal preferences. Personally, I like Filevine. I think Filevine is an amazing case management system, but everyone's got a different opinion because there are so many case management systems out there. Clio is a fine product. I used to, my first after starting my firm, we used to use needles at my old firm. When we started the new firm, we used Clio. I think Clio is a fine product. It's gotten a lot better than what it was before. There's a lot of advantages about it. It's a good product to use if you're a general practice because it does a variety of things. It's got time tracking, a lot of other things. It syncs up with Google Drive and Dropbox. There's a lot of great features about it. So my advice to you is when you're looking at a system like that, figure out what your processes are and then see if your processes fit within whatever the case management system is. Other tools that you might be able to use. Google Drive is great. Dropbox is great. Most people know about that stuff. Zapier is a really, really good product. There's a free part of Zapier. I think you can get up to 20 zaps. Zapier allows you to connect different softwares. And I'm using the term softwares loosely because it connects email to Google Drive to probably even has a Clio Zap. I don't know, not quite sure if it does. There's QuickBooks. Just go check out Zapier.com. It's an amazing product. That's a very simple one. I don't know how detailed you want me to go. I use G Suite because it allows me to connect a lot of other softwares easily. But hopefully that answers your question. I could go for days on different softwares that you could use.
Right. No, you recently had a podcast where you interviewed somebody right after, I think it was the ABA Tech Conference, and she was talking about Zapier, and I think she's doing a session, your upcoming conference on that. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, so I honestly can't tell. I can't remember which person you're talking about. I remember a conversation about it. We are going to have a panel just on automation, and Zapier is going to be a big part of it. So yeah, you're right. But we're going to have about 3 or 4 people that are going to talk about that because Zapier is huge. I mean, and even the paid plans are super cheap. So it's a really, really effective tool. And I cannot overstate that. It's a really good tool to use. And so I will also say though, it's probably a little too complicated for some people. If you're just starting out with some of this stuff, you may want to dip your toe in the water with other things before you get into Zapier because Zapier can be complicated in some aspects.
Yeah, and I want to add here that not everybody is tech savvy. So if this stuff scares you as an attorney and a firm owner, understand that you can have somebody on staff or an outside contractor do this stuff for you. So don't think that you need to figure everything out yourself. As a matter of fact, my position, and I wonder, Tyson, what you think about this, my position is that you as the firm owner should be doing as little as possible with everything in your firm, including the practice of law. You should be figuring out every single piece of that comes across your desk. Who can I delegate this to? Who can handle this for me? Do you have an opinion on that?
I've got a strong opinion on it. I think you're absolutely right. I think you need to figure out what you want to do as the firm owner. If you just want to sit around and collect paychecks, guess what? You can figure that out. You're going to make less money in the long run, and I guess not long run, you're going to make less money per paycheck because you're going to have to pay people to do it. You figure out what you want to do as a firm owner, and you can do it. You can figure it out. Go through a little exercise and write down all the things, all the functions that you're doing on a daily basis, and then figure out what you can automate, what you can delegate, and what you eliminate. And that's really going to help you to figure out how do you get to that point where you're doing only the things that you want to do and only the things that you should be doing. So I think that's a really helpful way of doing it because, you're right. Let's be honest, you shouldn't be doing all the different things. For example, early on, I shouldn't have been answering the phone. I shouldn't have been scanning in documents. I shouldn't have been sending out letters. There's a variety of things I shouldn't have been doing. I was doing them when I started hiring and delegating things to people. I made a lot more money. It just works that way. Then I started doing only the things I wanted to do.
Right. And I know firsthand that even after you recognize that you need to hire somebody and you bring them on staff, until you're comfortable with saying, I don't have to be the one to do this and I can give it to somebody else, I can trust it will get done. And even if it's not done exactly the way that I want it, it's better than me keeping it, owning it, and doing it myself. People will hire a paralegal and that paralegal will sit there all day idle waiting for work because they're not able to figure out how to delegate it. And that's an art that needs to be learned. As you know, if you haven't done it, if you haven't been in a management position where you're delegating to other people at your previous, employment at another law firm before you went out on your own, that's something that you need to figure out how to do so that you're not keeping everything to yourself. And that goes for everything, even beyond the practice of law. Like, you shouldn't be doing your own books. You should understand how to read them and how to see what's going on, but somebody else should be doing those books for you. And, you shouldn't be implementing your own tech. Someone else should do it for you, but you should have a full understanding of what it's capable of doing and how to use it so that you can be an operator, but you don't need to be the one to figure everything out. So I want to ask you one more thing before we wrap up, and that is, people, when they're trying to grow their firm, and anybody trying to grow a business in general, at some point you're like, I can't do this on my own, right? I need help. What's your take on where should people go to find support, or rather than asking where they should go to find support, what was your experiences? Like, did you have mentors? Did you have coaches? Did you go to conferences? Like, where did you get the knowledge that you got? And I know that you're a weird breed because you knew from the beginning you wanted to start a firm, and a lot of lawyers don't know that coming out of law school. So you really came into this with an entrepreneurial mindset. But that aside, even though you had the right mindset, without making a ton of mistakes on your own, you had to have people, guide you along the way. So what was your journey, and what would you suggest to somebody who's on the same path as far as what kind of help they should look for?
Get a mentor. I think that's a great way of doing it. I had a series of mentors. I didn't just have one. I took very seriously the adage, and I'm going to get it wrong, but basically you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with the most. I don't know who said it, but it's really true. And so hang out with high level people. Hang out with the people that you envision yourself to be. I think that's a big part of it, because you're going to, you could just accidentally learn really great knowledge from them. So I would start with that. A spin-off of that is masterminds. We started with masterminds really early on. Me and Jim Hacking, my co-host on Maximum Lawyer, we started our own little mini masterminds in St. Louis, and they were very effective. And what we did was we made sure that we didn't bring in people that were in the same industry as we were. At one point, I think we had 3 lawyers, but we were all in different practice areas. But we are a group of 8 people, and they were different industries completely, and it was really mind-blowing, the things that we learned from other people. And it didn't cost us anything. It was just a group of 8 people that would meet every 6 weeks. We'd have 3 people that would go in the hot seat each time we met. And it was some pretty grueling times too. But it was, what you do is you start peeling back the layers, because when you're on a hot seat for 30 minutes and you start with 10 minutes of talking about things you're doing, and then the rest of it's people just prying into you, and just prying and prying and prying, you really get down to the deep stuff, and you figure out what you need to do and what you need to change. It's a really effective way. John Fisher, I've been fortunate enough I went to his mastermind 5-6 years ago, and I've become friends with him, and he's a mentor now. And I've become friends with a lot of high level people in that group. I remember whenever I went to that group, I looked around. I think I went to that group in maybe 2012. So it was about, like 7 years ago. Right. And I remember looking around seeing, like, I shouldn't be in the room with this guy. I shouldn't be in the room with her. These are multi-million-dollar lawyers, and I'm learning from these people. It's incredible. There's a lot of those opportunities around the country. So hitch your wagon to some of these people, and absorb as much as you can from them. But make sure you don't mooch off them. Make sure you can give some value back to them too. So don't just, hitch your wagon and expect them to give you everything. You're going to have to do a little work yourself too. But that's the main thing. And then I'm always learning. I'm reading 2 books right now. It's funny, 2018, I had to sort of slow down a little bit, because 2017, by I think the 4th week, I'd already read 22 books, because I just kind of go through these binges where I just read a lot of it at one time. So 2018, I slowed down a little bit, but I think it's important that you're always sharpening your swords and always just learning. It's really important. Otherwise, you're not going to get better.
Right. And the truth is that if you look at anybody who has achieved success in business, they're always consuming. They're always asking questions. If you go to a conference, you'll find those people in the front of the room. They're not afraid to learn from others, even though they might be a guru or, in a leadership role, front and center. They're constantly trying to improve themselves. And I think that's a good point. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast and listening to this interview means that you're in the right place. Like, you're already trying to find out that information, you're consuming it. And Tyson and Jim have a great podcast themselves. And this is a great segue here to jump into that real quick. So Tyson, just tell us a bit about that podcast. And then I'm curious to know, as you're sharing, I'm curious to know how you and Jim hooked up. You guys are co-hosts on that podcast. Like, how did you get introduced to each other and end up starting this show together?
It's funny. So Jim and I had we had a conversation a few weeks ago, just kind of like jogging my memory, like how it all kind of started, because Jim and I knew each other because he was an adjunct professor at St. Louis University School of Law, and he taught a law practice management class. And it was really kind of cool because the way he taught it was he brought in people, other lawyers, and he taught like a couple of classes, but otherwise it was a 2-hour class. He would bring in a person to speak the first hour, and then we would learn the second half. It was actually really kind of a cool class, and there's probably 3 people that really cared about that class. It was a summer class, but I was one of the people that I loved it. I kind of soaked it up. But again, that's also, I knew what I wanted to do, and I think that's one of the values of knowing where you're headed. Because if you're sort of flopping in the wind, you don't quite have that guidance. I had that guidance because I knew where I wanted to go. And we just sort of stayed in touch. But it was funny because we had actually, by chance, I wouldn't say we drifted away. We were still staying in touch every few months. But we actually ran into each other at a Culver's, and it was like in a random spot in St. Louis. I just happened to pull in. Didn't even have plans to pull in there, and I just happened to because I was hungry. Same thing for him. We sat down and talked about an hour, and then we just kind of re-engaged and started talking again. And then we started talking about marketing every week or so. And then we said, let's just start recording this. And it just seriously just started with a couple of guys with a couple of microphones. We didn't know what the heck we were doing. I can already tell you've already done a lot more research on getting this thing going than we did. We didn't know what tools we're supposed to use. We've probably recorded 5 episodes that have never aired because we didn't record it. I mean, there's so many errors that you make, but I'd say about the 10th episode, we said, hey, let's do a Facebook group. Groups, people started to engage there. And that's really been the rocket fuel to get the podcast going. It's taken off from there. We've had some of the best attorneys in the country, some of the best lawyer business owners in the country on the podcast, some of the best experts in the country on a variety of things, marketing, practice management, whatever it may be. And it's really taken off. Last year we had a conference, and I think we had about four months of runway. We said, hey, let's do a conference. And so we had never done a conference in our lives. And 75 people showed up, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. People actually showed up to this. A guy from Canada showed up. This is insane. And then this year we're gonna hit 150 without problem. And we've got sponsors now. And it's been insane. It's been a fun journey, but it really just started with 2 guys and a microphone. That's it.
It's so interesting. And what's interesting is that you didn't really have any intention of where it was going to go. It was just kind of like, hey, let's do this and put this out there. What was your motivation? Just adding value to others? Is that just what it is? Like, what's the why behind that launch?
So it's funny, we still haven't even figured out necessarily how we're going to monetize it. We had talked about early on, okay, is this something we can make some money off of? But that was a secondary thing. We did really just like, let's share what information we have. We feel like we know a little bit, so let's share what information we have. Let's sort of spread the love. And that's how it's always been. I sort of call it a crowdsourced podcast because we have so many people that just contribute and help make it better. Honestly, we don't make any money off of it. So it's still just that same thing. We're just sharing knowledge, and it's other people's knowledge that we're mostly sharing. We still share some of our own knowledge, but it's mostly people that come on and learn from our guests. We've got some ideas. We actually met a couple weeks ago. We've got an idea in the works on how a couple things we're going to be able to help spread the love, contribute for more high level law firm owners, people that want to get to that $1 million mark. So we do got some ideas in the works, but we're very, very cautious about altering what we have because the podcast is such a awesome community. It really is such a group of people that really just, you go to the Facebook group and people just giving their biggest secrets away. And, and everyone's sharing, there's no takers. We kick takers out of the group. So if you come in and start advertising, we kick you out of the group right away.
Right.
So we're very, very, we shelter the group as much as we can. And so we don't want to ever, people are like, well, you should advertise. We don't take advertisers because we don't want to affect what we have and how good that group is and how good the podcast is now. So I'm just sort of rambling now, but
right. No,
it's answer your question though.
Hopefully. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's great because really the shows that people are attracted to and that they want to listen to are the ones that are there just for the greater good and to serve the community. I mean, even me, as a law firm growth coach, I can't come to it with this complete 100% giving. I'm just doing it for the sake of everybody because everyone knows that ultimately I want more business. And although that's really not my motivation, it really is just let me get this information out there and help as many people as I want, because there's no way that I'm going to serve everybody that's out there. And there's also no way that the free stuff that they're hearing on the podcast is going to be the perfect solution for everybody. There's always something more that somebody needs. But I love that you guys are approaching it this way, and you won't even take advertisers for that reason. And, we can chat offline on some ideas of what you can do to monetize the podcast. But I know that's not your motivation, and that's really cool. But you did mention this conference. Last year you had 75 people. This year you're going to have 150 people. Who's that conference for? And how many spots you have open, and what does it cost to attend, and how do they go and sign up?
We have less than 40 spots left, so we've sold the majority of our tickets, and we're still. We're in March still, so I don't know if this is coming out in March, but we're in March now. The conference is June 5th, 6th, and 7th. To get tickets, you go to MaximumLawyer.com. You can get them there. You can also search us on Eventbrite if you want to join the Facebook group. You can get involved there. The only requirements are that you're a lawyer and you don't advertise. That's it. So. That's about it. So you can get in the group. It's free. You can get all the free knowledge from people, and there's ways there's links to the conference there. What we do. So last year was really interesting. So with the podcast, what we do is we have people on to talk about their knowledge, to share their knowledge. And sometimes it's just law firm owners that know something very specific about a certain thing. We have them come on. We took a very similar approach last year with the conference, where we would have a speaker come on, talk about a topic that they know about, and they could have, some of them were big names and some of them were small names, but they knew something really, really well, and they came in and talked about it. We're going to do the same thing this year, but it's funny, last year we had 45-minute speaking spots, and we thought that those were really short, but we've learned, and we're actually doing 20-minute speaking spots, so we're really cutting it down. It's sort of TED style, but when people come in, they're laser focused, and they're talking about a specific topic. And so we're going to have double the speakers this year, but a lot more content. It's going to be laser focused. And so same thing, it's a variety of things. It's intake, it's practice management, it's systemizing things, it's marketing, video, Google AdWords, a variety of things. We've got some of the most knowledgeable people in the country coming to talk. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, and it sounds like you'd be a fool not to attend this conference. So if you're available, was it June 5th, 6th, and 7th? Did I get that right?
Yeah. So, and let me look at my calendar just to make sure because we have it's a free half day, it's a dinner basically. So 5th is a Wednesday, so you come in, we have a free dinner with drinks, and then 6th and 7th are full days, Thursday, Friday. And so, and with those on Thursday night, there's another dinner, and we'll have entertainment. It's a basically start to finish kind of thing. And last year we did a Cardinals game. We got rid of the Cardinals game this year because we wanted to make sure everyone can attend. So we're having a live concert and all that kind of stuff. I think it's gonna be pretty bananas. I think it's gonna be awesome.
That's awesome. So again, they can find out the link for it in the Facebook group, right? They got to go and join that Facebook group. What's the name of the group?
It's Maximum Lawyer. I think it's just Maximum Lawyer Podcast is the name of the group. You can also go to MaximumLawyer.com, and you can there's a link there as well.
That's great. All right, so go check it out. We'll also link that up in the show notes, and hopefully you can join Tyson. And is Jim going to be there? I'm assuming
Jim will be there
right?
too. Yeah, all the
Tyson and Jim
there.
and 150 other attorneys, as well as all the speakers. And it sounds like a wonderful, wonderful time and a wonderful opportunity. Tyson, I thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and sharing here on the podcast. And guys, go check out the Maximum Lawyer podcast. It's an awesome show, and Tyson and Jim do a great job. They bring on great guests, and I'm enjoying it myself. So you know that you will too. So Tyson, thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
That's it for this week's episode of Profit with Law. If you have enjoyed the show, please consider sharing it with at least one person. Imagine how many lives we can change if we each shared this episode. Another way to share the episode is on social media. We appreciate your support and look forward to you joining us again next week.